Odyssey. Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson.
Insert Democrat socialist here.
Runs the Democratic House floor for 30 plus years running. He's promising this and he's stealing that. Where can you get that kind of money? He's using your house like his own piggy bank. You ought to know by now. You can pay off your house here in Illinois, but you can never keep up with the taxes. Oh, how it's always been the plan to have a taxpayer pay, no doubt. Not a matter of if anymore, but when you're moving out. I said when you're
Top of the morning,
out.
Dan and Amy. The theme music means it's time for our weekly conversation with Ted Dabrowski, president of Wirepoints.org, all things Illinois policy related. The fate of Illinois' tax credit scholarship program could be decided this week by the General Assembly. And, you know, all we can do is point out the hypocrisy. All we can do is point out the bad actors. And probably they won't be held accountable by the electorate in this state, and I'm including in the suburbs, too. I'm not just talking about the city. Probably. But maybe at least some people will remember them as history's villains. Sort of the same conversation we had about the FBI. Maybe Comey and McCabe and Strzok and Page and others will never be held accountable. But maybe at least some people will remember them as history's villains, because they are. And anybody who would vote to take scholarship, privately funded scholarship programs away from lower to middle income families who want the same opportunities for their kids that the wealthy and the politically connected have, they are history's villains too. And I'm talking, and these people will still be the villains, because the only way the program stays is if enough pressure is applied such that they think there are political consequences. Because without pressure, I mean, these are individuals who are beholden to the teachers' union and vice versa. And they will move to kill this thing straight away, because why not? They have nary any political opposition in the state. We just spent a lot of time talking about all the legislators who send their kids to private schools, went to private schools, but also the principals, constitutional officers in Illinois, starting with Jelly Belly. Class of 82 at Milton Academy in Milton, Massachusetts. Of course, boarding school. Tuition there, $65,000 a year. Ooh. Illinois Attorney General Kwame Raoul, University of Chicago Lab School. Secretary of State Ali G., Alexi Giannoulias, Latin School. You know what the tuition in Latin is?
I think it's 45, right?
41. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And you're hearing their voices in defense of families, lower to middle income families with kids on scholarship or aspiring to get their kids on scholarship so they can send their kids to better schools wherever they can attend. You're hearing their voices, are you? If you are, please direct where you're hearing them my way, because I'm not. I'm not hearing it much from the Republican Party either. A few individual Republicans. I'm talking about office holders. Few individuals, but there's no cri de coeur coming from the GOP. There's no clear moral stand by the Republican Party elevating this issue, beating down the Springfield and Chicago press corps to cover it with the attention it deserves. Nope. So we'll see. It could more or less quietly go away, and there's a lot of school choice proponents that are playing right into the hands of this political ruling class, thinking that diplomacy with these Marxist goons is the path to salvaging the program, and it's not. I've got a theory on where things stand. I think it's less than a 50-50 chance that the program is sustained. But I think, interestingly, it will come down to the Latino caucus in the House. And I say interestingly because I think we have in our mind that, Latinos, especially first, second, third generation Latinos, They've come to this country, or their parents or their grandparents did, make a better life. They're industrious, and they are faithful. Many are Catholic and family oriented. And this is where Republicans can make real progress with at least one minority group, although there's a lot of different ethnicities under the banner Latino. It's more complicated than that, but that's generally the thing. And generally that there's some truth to that. But there's also another part of it. And the other part of it is a lot of college-educated Latinos who grew up being fed Marxism in schools are Marxists when they get elected to office, too. Imagine that. I mean, look at Carlos Ramirez Rosa, who is the newly inaugurated BLM Brandon's floor leader in the House, avowed Marxist. These are Che Guevara types. I'm not talking about dilettantes like Anastasia Murray and white chicks in Hinsdale. These are
They're all in. Yep.
hardcore ideological Marxists on the city council and in the Latino caucus in the House. And they're transactional hacks like Lisa Hernandez. Okay. But there are others who are, as I say, dyed in the wool on this. And it seems to me that there's a lot of Latino families that benefit from the scholarship program. We had one of them on yesterday, lives in Pilsen. And it needs to be made clear that if the Latino caucus doesn't get on board and those scholarships go away, particularly for Latino families, and some of those schools in Latino communities and neighborhoods go away, then these individual legislators, particularly in the House, but not limited, need to be held accountable politically. That's the play I would make. But, I'm just one guy talking on the radio. I'm not smart like all the other people marshaling the effort here. For more on this, Ted Dabrowski joins us now. Ted, thanks for being with us. Appreciate it. What do you think of my assessment?
I think your assessment is good, Dan. The 50-50, it's an interesting question. I think people need to understand how this thing happens anyway. Look, it passed in 2017. It didn't pass on its own merits back then. What happens in Illinois is that in these big budget bills, when they're being negotiated right before the session ends, there's tons of horse trading going on, lots of trading. And Rauner and others were able to get this thing in there in a 1,000-page bill.
That's right.
Because they gave away tons of stuff. Like that. It was horrible what they gave away, but we did get school choice. Now here's what's happening now. They can kill it. It'll die if it's not renewed. But you never know that the unions can be bought. You never know what the unions want. Maybe they want massive raises, and they'll take a little bit of extension of school choice in exchange. But my own view is that you've seen everything that Brandon Johnson has said, and I think it was Chalkbeat that talked today about how Johnson wants to move away from high stakes accountability, meaning get rid of testing, and he also wants to get rid of market-based school choice. So, CTU and others are going to put massive pressure to kill this thing. It's going to be one of their first signs of success that they can kill these things and bring about equity. So I'm very skeptical. I think what they do is they kick it out of the budget bill, and then they put it back into the veto session where this one standalone plan will try to pass on its own, and the unions will have full target on it and kill it.
If it goes to veto in the fall, then it's almost assuredly dead. But it may be dead before the week is out. And in the interim, here's what you have the Latino caucus focused on: Jamie Andrade in the House and Javier Cervantes in the Senate. Legislation to prohibit drivers from using an electronic communications device while operating a motor vehicle, including any video conferencing or social media apps. Mm-hmm. Oh wow, thanks. I can't FaceTime while I'm driving. Once you pass a law pass a law to make it illegal to drive blindfolded. Yeah, no kidding. But this is where they're focused on. They're not focused on their constituents and their constituents' educational interests. And it seems to me that again, school choice proponents are not doing a terribly good job of prodding them to focus on those families and those kids and their educational opportunities. This behind closed doors negotiation silliness is where you get beaten up. It's not where you make progress.
Yeah, I mentioned this last week that when we wrote about this, we're the first to kind of like say, hey, watch out, this thing's about to die. Whatever it was a couple weeks ago, I got lots of pushback saying, hey, don't make waves. We don't want to wake up the unions. We want to negotiate quietly.
We don't want to wake them up like they don't know what's going on.
Right,
I mean,
exactly.
It's just so
the unions are always the first to know.
Good grief.
And so it goes back to your point. This is a great way for Republicans, any reformers, but Republicans to differentiate themselves from the Democrats, and and take the moral high ground on how this program is great for kids who can't afford to find good schools. You don't hear they should be out there. Even the Tribune beat them to it, right? The Tribune actually wrote an editorial supporting school choice. So
if the Tribune
Republicans are missing an opportunity.
If the Tribune writes an editorial and no one reads it, did it actually write an editorial?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah, all right. Well, Ted, as you know, many Chicagoans are outraged, that the city and state are prioritizing a growing number of migrants that are coming here over citizens that are homeless. And we're hearing in New York, like homeless vets are getting pushed out of hotels, and then immigrants are moving in. What are 4 reasons why Chicago should dump its sanctuary city status?
Well, we wrote about that. It's a really easy one too, and I guess this is another point that could be highlighted by anybody who wants to oppose what the hell's going on. Chicago is making a mess even before the migrant crisis, even before the COVID crisis, was making a mess of its own residents. And if you look at the South Side and if you look at the West Side, my gosh, we can't control our crime at all. We can't take care of our poor. We can't educate our kids. I looked at something that I haven't looked at in a while, was the black unemployment in Chicago. In 2021 is the latest numbers we have. 20% unemployment overall for blacks, highest in the country for the big cities. So we excuse my French, but we suck at taking care of our people, or creating an environment, I should say, creating an environment where our people can thrive. And so, when they start passing sanctuary laws and doing all the virtue signaling they're doing, they're making a mess of the very people, our very people we're supposed to help and take care of in terms of making a thriving city so that they can thrive here, not be forced to leave to go to Houston or Atlanta.
Well, you must have missed BLM Brandon's first acts as mayor, executive order that is going to analyze the budget to find funding for youth employment and enrichment programs.
Year round, yes, not just for the summer months.
I always found that was his number one go-to when he was asked questions about how to make the city safe and all that. That he's going to hire 200 students. It's like, didn't people know how to push back on that and say, how absurd that sounds? Now, getting kids jobs is good. Now, the government giving kids jobs is not good because it's like creating more deficits, and the government's already a mess and heavy and fat anyway.
And I mean, what are these jobs? These are like make work jobs. I mean, they're not getting you into the economy in the way that that young people should be getting into the economy. But and on the public safety piece, don't forget his third executive order. He's got a deputy mayor for community safety that's going to focus on root causes of crime and violence. I think it's going to be Kamala Harris. I'm not sure.
Well, yeah, and then we're back to that discussion. Root causes, okay, it's great to talk about root causes, but root causes, we haven't figured this thing out in 60 years, so we've made a mess of it. It's going to take forever to figure out root causes, and until he tamps down on crime immediately, and that's going to be his big first test. If he doesn't ever tamp down on crime immediately, root causes won't matter because people will keep fleeing here.
I saw that Terry Duffy said. I mean, this is like it's a sort of a shot across the bow, but it's pretty tame as per usual from the C-suite class in Chicago. That the CME is prepared to leave if they're forced to, which is basically his way of saying, if you put a LaSalle Street tax on the exchanges, we're going to leave.
Right.
Yeah, I think he's right to send that message, and I think I would take the messages a little more seriously now because a lot of them might be signaling that they're ready to go, and they don't want to surprise people and catch all kinds of hell when they actually do it. So it might be smart to start letting people know, hey, if you don't fix things now, if I don't see a real move to improve things, whether it's on crime and taxes and certainly avoiding the financial tax on transactions, we're out of here. But it is a smart thing to do so that you don't catch hell when you actually do it.
Well, he said it. CEO Duffy said it while Johnson was being sworn in at a meeting yesterday. That was interesting, the timing. But when we see what happened with Walmart, Citadel, Tyson, Boeing, Guggenheim, the numbers are adding up, and you're talking about big numbers. You're talking about people who pay a lot of taxes, wealthy people,
this whole tax-based discussion, I think that's the one that I think is going to have to jump up really high. Is you got these empty office buildings, they're 50% occupied. When you understand how taxation works in Chicago, where the levy doesn't drop, but the revenues from big properties do, guess who's going to be stuck with the bill? It's going to be residents, and it's going to be a massive move. You're talking about 15, 20, 25% increases just on that alone. Forget funding Johnson's initiatives. I'm just talking about the tax shift from commercial to residential will be massive.
Yeah, he should think about a deputy mayor for moving out, that is. Ted Dabrowski, President Wirepoints, wirepoints.org. Ted, thanks as always.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
It's news, opinion, insight. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Don't defund the police. Hire the police to protect your business. Rising crime has been crippling business owners in Illinois more and more in the past year. Blue Star Security can protect your most valuable asset, your business, to protect both you and your customers. Blue Star Security is the only security company in Chicago with over 500 off-duty police officers, all W-2 employees.
I'm Anthony Barchetto, president of Blue Star Security and a 20-year law enforcement veteran. Our team is exclusively state-certified active and retired law enforcement professionals who provide the highest standards in security. We serve